bad luck. Some nights I call it a draw. Some nights I wish that my lips could build a castle. Some nights I wish they just fall off. But I still wake up. What a play! What I stand for. What do I stand for? What do I stand for?
I stand for big goals in the biggest games.
And for Patrick Kane, that is a hat-trick to complete the night.
I stand for overtime winners.
Seabrook on the ribbon line to the score! The Blackhawks have dispatched the Detroit Red Wings!
We stand
for 2 goals
in 17 seconds.
I stand for living out childhood dreams.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chicago Blackhawks have won the Stanley Cup for the second time in 4 seasons.
I stand for championship celebrations with a few million of our closest friends.
This Stanley Cup team stands for you.
Welcome back to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. And, of course, we have Mr. Scott Powers on hold, and I'm going to get to you in just a second. He writes for ESPN 1000 talking about the Chicago Blackhawks and the DePaul Blue Demons, your DePaul Blue Demons, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But, Tom, that was an amazing run, and those highlights just showed the emotion that this Blackhawks team put on the ice.
Yeah, that run last year was something special. All season long, it was something special to watch the Blackhawks. I mean, the hockey they were playing was just unbelievable, and that video brings it all back. And that Red Wings series, man, coming back from that was 3-1 deficit, and then dealing with Quick there with the Kings, and then just somehow dispatching the Bruins there in the finals was something. But it was a great run for the Blackhawks last year.
It definitely brings chills down my spine.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. All right, we have Mr. Scott Powers on the air with us. Mr. Powers, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. All right, Mr. Powers, you write for ESPN 1000 for the Chicago Blackhawks and for the DePaul Blue Demons. So tell the listeners just a little bit about what you like to write about, those kind of certain things.
I mostly write for the Blackhawks for ESPN in Chicago, and I kind of dabble in some college stuff still. I used to cover high school and colleges, and the job's kind of evolved the last few years. But, I cover the Blackhawks. This will be my second season on the beat, and I still do some recruiting stuff with Illinois and DePaul, and do a little bit more college basketball and football these days, but still kind of involved with the college hoops still too.
Exactly, and that Blackhawks series and all the Blackhawks series must have been incredible to cover. But my favorite series, obviously, them winning the Cup in Game 6 was unimaginable, and I'm sure if you saw it, you must have been going insane. But the Detroit Red Wings series was insane for me, and the way they came back, three games down 3-1, and especially in that Game 6, the way they settled in, and Jesus tying it up, Bickle giving them the lead at 3-2, and then Frolik giving them the open net goal, or not the open net goal, the penalty goal, of course. What were your thoughts, especially the way Corey Crawford played in that series?
Yeah, obviously it was an incredible comeback. I think going back to that Game 6 where I remember seeing Stan Bowman in the after the second period, most people go down to the press room and kind of right from there and watch the game from there. And I remember seeing Stan Bowman. The toilets are actually, you got to stand with the public. So after the second period, he was standing with some fans waiting for the toilets downstairs, and I just kind of felt bad for this man because it looked like they were on the verge of losing the series and getting eliminated, and the season being a disaster after having such a great regular season. But the way they came back in that Game 6, and then throughout those last final 3 games, the way that they were able to persevere and really, come back from what being down 3-1 was. You felt like at that point, they were going to win it all just because, they definitely had their backs against the wall, and the way they played to come back from that, especially having to win, when the win in Detroit was, it was pretty big.
Absolutely, and then you talk about after winning that series, you just kind of felt like it was destiny for this Hawks team to go all the way. But then they ran into Boston there in the Cup Finals, and that was such a back and forth series. You felt like the bigger Boston Bruins there towards the end they were starting to dominate a little more, especially in Game 6. I thought it was pretty much all but over there, and then the Hawks came out of nowhere, scoring those 2 goals and giving them the cup. What was going through your mind there watching that Game 6? Did you kind of feel like it was definitely coming back? It was going to go to a Game 7.
I think everyone down there in the press room felt like the game was over and going back to Chicago, and I think at that point everyone's writing, trying to write a story for them. The Blackhawks don't lose, and they're going to be a Game 7, and all of a sudden they get the 1 goal. So you start rewriting your story, and you're kind of glancing up at the television, making sure what's going on, and then 17 seconds later you get that 2nd goal. And I think from everyone on the ice to the stadium to the journalists, and it was kind of just a whirlwind of what happened there. It was like, wow. It was throughout the series that was just well played by both teams, and obviously you had 3 overtime games that could have gone either way, and some puck bounces a different way, and Boston may win that series, and for what the Blackhawks did all season, and then for it to culminate just the way it did in 17 seconds was just kind of put a nice bow on the season.
And what I was thinking about during that last rush, especially when Dave Bolin scored that goal, was the magic, or maybe the Bickle goal as well when they tied it up, was the magic against Nashville where Patrick Kane tied it up with 12 seconds left in that Game 5, I believe it was, or Game 4 at home in 2010, where they, of course, went on to win the Stanley Cup as well. And that being said, this was a Stanley Cup, a lot more pressure. But moving on, of course, with Dave Bolin, the Rat, scoring that game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup Finals, and now he is moved on to Toronto. What were your thoughts on the Blackhawks trading a big piece to their puzzle?
No, I've never, I don't think Bolin was, he obviously contributed in ways, and he came through with that big goal, but I think for the most part that he pretty much underachieved. He was expected to be that second-line center. And, due to injuries, partly kind of held him back from that last year. But he was also inconsistent. And when he did play, he often took some stupid penalties. So, I didn't think Bolin's departure was going to be a big deal, and I still don't. The guys they lost for Leak and Bolin and Ian Stahlberg. I think out of everyone, I think Emery might be the biggest one. I think all those guys were role players, and they expected more out of Stahlberg to score, and obviously, Quenneville was pretty unhappy with his play in the playoffs. And for Leak was a nice player too, and but he was mostly a penalty kill guy, and like I said, I think Bolin underachieved. So I think the guys they have coming in, the guys like Jimmy Hayes and Ben Smith and those kind of guys can kind of fill in those. We're just talking about role players for the most part. And then I think the key one is Ray Emery leaving. He, as much as Crawford did during the playoffs, and he was obviously out of his mind throughout the season. But during the regular season, it was Emery had as much to do with the Blackhawks' success, and they both share that net. So you bring in Nikolai Habibulin, who's had some success in the past, but he's up there in the age, and he's been a little bit more inconsistent the last few years and dealt with some injuries. So I think that'll be one of the big keys this year, is trying to replace whether it's Crawford playing a lot more games or Habibulin trying to get back to his old self. But I also think that there's a guy, Antti Ranta, who's in the minors, who may come up and be the answer if Habibulin struggles. But the guys leaving, I think they all played their role, and they did those roles well last season. But I think they're all replaceable.
Absolutely. But touching on that Emery Crawford thing, Crawford obviously got that huge contract, much deserving of it. You mentioned it. Yeah, he's unbelievable in the playoffs. But we did see how important Ray Emery was for this team in the regular season. So just curious, do you think Crawford's going to be able to to live up to all that money. I think he'll absolutely be worth it, but you gotta see it's going to be a full season now this year, not the strike shortened one, and then obviously hopefully the Hawks can make it back to the playoffs, hopefully to make another run. So do you think Crawford's going to be able to back up the season he had last year?
Yeah, it's yet to be seen. And I was surprised Crawford got the deal when he did. I thought that he was going to have to prove himself for another season to get kind of that long term kind of to get the money that he was getting paid. He's getting about $6 million a year is what he'll be making. And I thought they're going to have to see another season. This will be his fourth year in the league, and his first year was pretty good. Second year was down last year. Obviously played well, but I thought to see a consistency for another season, but also to see it through an 82 game season, I thought was going to be key for him to earn that sort of contract, whether it was from the Blackhawks or someone else. But obviously Stan Bowman saw it a different way and felt like he was deserving now. So I think Crawford may have turned the corner last season. Third year, sometimes goaltenders it just click and they get it, and they're obviously hoping that Crawford can kind of continue what he did, last year. But I obviously, like you said too, Emery was such a big factor in he started 20 plus games, and so I think this season will be really telling. Obviously Crawford's got his money, but they're going to need him to play at that level or close to it for them to be a Stanley Cup contending team for the next 3 or 4 years if he's the guy in that.
Yeah, we saw it just a couple of years ago in the Phoenix series where I was confused or disappointed with Corey Crawford's performance and how he performed, especially in the Game 6. But Tom mentioned about how the Hawks are hopefully they make the playoffs, and I think he's saying that just because he's a Flyers fan. But bringing in, of course, Ray Emery, and now he's in Philly. And, of course, you mentioned Ray Emery being a big part to that team, and he was. Crawford and him got a lot of starts, and Emery did get a lot of starts in the regular season, not any in the playoffs. Do you think the Hawks should have re-signed Emery? Obviously, Philly gave him 1 year, $8 million, so a lot of money there for a backup goaltender. So what do you think about that move?
I think the Blackhawks tried to re-sign him. I think that was Bowman's plan to bring Emery back for a couple of years as a backup, and the Flyers, offered him an opportunity to start, and I think that was important to him. There was, I think that was key to him signing in Philadelphia, and I think Hobby Bullen quickly became Plan B. The other, I guess the Hobby Bullen's also kind of insurance that they signed this Antti Raanta guy from Finland, in July and in June, and he had a great season in Finland, and he's a little bit young and he's yet to play in North America. So I think if Raanta, if he progresses as they hope and he shows to be the sort of type of goaltender he was in Europe, that I think that he may be the guy, towards the end of the season that comes in and ends up being Crawford's backup. He put up some big numbers last year in Finland, and he showed some potential during the preseason. So he's going to start off the year in Rockford. So I think Hobby Bullen, they're hoping maybe he does. He's played well at the beginning of most seasons in the last few years, and he's kind of tailed off as the year's gone on. So I think that may be the plan. I think Crawford's going to get the bulk of the starts anyway, but maybe between Hobby Bullen and Raanta, they have some backups. It's going to be hard to duplicate what Emery did. But the other thing is the Blackhawks defense also. It's key for Crawford and Emery. They don't see the same type of shots, the amount of shots a lot of the goaltenders do, because the Blackhawks defensemen, they have so much depth and talent there. So I think that's also a factor in the Blackhawks goaltenders having success.
Absolutely, that defense last year during that run was great, and the power play defense all year was outstanding. But Rook, last quick thing here on Ray Emery. Do you think you think it'll pan out for Philly? Because Philly's been searching for a goaltender for.
Tom's pretty nervous, as you could tell.
For 10 years. Every time they sign a goaltender, I think it's gonna blow up in their faces. But I do have a little more hope for Ray Emery this year, just because he was so great last year in the regular season.
Yeah, I don't. I think with Ray last year it was he was finally feeling healthy. He dealt with some injury stuff, and he got some consecutive starts. So I think he just felt just more comfortable back there and more in a rhythm. So if he can stay healthy and he gets that opportunity like they say they're going to give him, I think there's a good chance that he excels there. I think he's proven to be. When he's at his best, he's really good. Going back to that Calgary Flames game last year where, stole a victory during that 24-game point streak. It was probably the game they should have lost, and Emery just played out of his mind and stopping shots. And, at his best, he's still an elite goalie, and he just hasn't been able to prove that last few seasons dealing with injury stuff. So I think he's a good guy, and he was always good to the reporters, and if he can stay injury free, there's no reason why he may not be the answer there for the Flyers.
Mr. Powers, we have to take a quick break here. Do you mind sticking around for 10 more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
All right, again, so I'm going to turn down your mic here. Thank you very much for sticking around with us. And again, we're going to talk a little more Hawks about this season coming up.
Sure.
All right, and again, that was great. That was great talk about what we just heard from Mr. Powers. Just touching on this season before we take a break, or this past season, just what a run. And the Hawks are definitely losing something to Ray Emery, but Hobby Bolin, I think, brings something to the Hawks that they had before. Of course, being a part of this team in 2009 and having the experience with the Blackhawks organization.
Right. I mean, we mentioned he is a little up there. He's 40 years old now, but tons of experience. But I like the point Mr. Powers was making about how they may transition to that Ranta as their backup goaltender by the end of the year. So that'll be an interesting development to check out. Exactly,
a younger guy, but the other big thing that why they signed Hobby Bolin was to try to be a mentor for Crawford.
Right.
And I think the more games Crawford starts, it's because Hobby Bolin is helping him there.
Right.
So I think they're going to keep Hobby Bolin even if they do bring up Ranta.
Definitely, and anytime you can have a guy with tons of experience help your young goalkeeper, your young stud goalkeeper, definitely is a good idea.
Hopefully Crawford is that stud, just as he was in the playoffs.
Yeah, hopefully for a full season.
Yeah, all right, we're going to take a quick break here, take a quick music break,
all right,
and then we'll dive back into the Blackhawks. How about a short song here, Tom?
Quick song, all right. We'll just do "Walk the Line" by Johnny Cash.
Sounds good. Of course, nice. A little oldie, but that sounds terrific. I'm sure Mr. Powers will enjoy that.
We're throwing it back.
We're throwing it back there. And again, when we come back, Mr. Powers is still on the line with us. We're talking more Blackhawks. We're talking about the Capitals game tomorrow night when Hossa, Crawford, and Hanzus with the shot on goal, as NBC likes to say. We're talking about the game tomorrow night. Again, you are listening to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line. I find it very, very easy to be true. I find myself alone when each day's through. Yes, I'll admit that I'm a fool for you. Because you're mine, I walk the line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I keep you on my mind both day and night. And happiness I've known proves that it's right. Because you're mine, I walk the line. You've got a way to keep me on your side. You give me cause for love that I can't hide. For you I know I'd even try to turn the tide. Because you're mine, I walk the line. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line.
There's only one radio station that connects you to DePaul University, Chicago, and the world.
Hey, you in my class? I am today.
It's Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.
You are back listening to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Mr. Powers, are you back with us?
Yes.
All right, terrific. Thank you for sticking around with us. to open up this next talking point with the Chicago Blackhawks, Brian Bickle being re-signed to a big contract, I'd say in hockey terms, 4 years, $16 million, getting $4 million a year. And you were touching on your article online saying Bickle, Kane, and Taves is going to be a very dangerous, and also a little tasty word in there as well. I was combining a couple words in there. So, what do you think about the Kane, Taves, and Bickle line this year, and why do you think it's a little more dangerous than what we saw in the playoffs?
I think Bickle is more comfortable in that spot. Obviously he excelled, and I don't know if he's going to have that kind of consistent production in the regular season. That's been the one knock on him in years past, is that he really hasn't been able to do it throughout an entire season. So, but he has. I think he's a better player, one, but two, he also has a lot of confidence going forward. Where he's often been on that third line and been kind of more of a role player who's kind of contributed where he can, but. He's proven that he can be a top six forward, and with guys like Kane and Taves around him, I think he'll have a lot of opportunities to score. And he's an above average skater, and he has a lot of power, and big body too. He can get in front of the net there and score some goals that way. So I think Kane and Taves are they can continue to progress, and they continue to mature, and their upside is still high, and I think Bickle's coming into his own too. He really understanding how to use his body and how to excel. From what I just saw the other night against the Capitals in the preseason game was, their line didn't produce a lot, but they were creating a lot of chances, and they seemed to be playing well off of each other. So I just think the potential for all three of those guys is really to have a big season. And I think Kane and Taves last year kind of played on separate lines just because they had to, and Quenneville's often like to separate them just to kind of give the team more balance. But bring them together, I think both of Kane's played a lot more consistent last season, and he's he looks primed for another big season. Taves continues to be himself, so you put it all together, and I think that top line is going to be pretty scary this year.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Kane last year. Finally maturing and starting to come more into himself, play much more consistently. So hopefully this year, he gets even better. We mentioned before the break that though Crawford, Handzus, and Hossa are all getting ready to suit up for their first preseason game. Just touching on Hossa, he is 34 years old. He's getting up there in years. Obviously, he's had some injury problems in his career. Do you see the Hawks limiting his time at all, or are they just going to let him go out there and play?
No, I think, in the first game and throughout the season, Quenneville's going to be smart on how he uses Handzus and Roseball and Hossa. And I think all those guys are getting up there in age, and, they've all kind of dealt with some injury stuff. Roseball missed some time early last season, and Hossa obviously had his back injury in the playoffs. And then Handzus, it was remarkable that he was even playing with, I think, a torn MTL. And he did something else too. But, yeah, he's... they fought through a lot, but those guys are getting up in age, and it's harder to bounce back from those injuries. So I think, sitting Handzus and Hossa, there was no reason to risk it during the preseason. But there's got to be some fear that, one, those guys aren't exactly prepared to play in a real game, or, if they're even 100% now. And I think going forward, a lot like the Blackhawks did last season, they were pretty careful about the top players' minutes and giving people rest when they need to. And this season it's back to 82 games, but it's kind of compact again because of the Olympics. So I think Quenneville's going to be pretty mindful on on how he uses those guys during games and giving them the rest they need when they're not playing. So I think those older guys, and then especially the star guys too that'll be playing in the Olympics, that be really careful with their ice time maybe before and after the Olympics, and not try to probably play them too much. And there's a fear that they'll get worn out before the playoffs arrive.
That's a great point to make, just talking about the Olympics. Obviously, with Kane and Taves and a bunch of other Hawks having roles in their respective teams and their respective countries, they're obviously going to be playing out there, and I'm sure Quenneville will keep that in mind. Talking about Hossa a little bit more, in Game 3, I believe, when he did not play, touching about the Stanley Cup Finals against Boston, did you think that was a little disrespectful towards the Chicago Blackhawks? I know a lot of Blackhawks fans felt so. I didn't think so. I thought it was a legitimate injury, but I forget what the injury was. What were your thoughts on the Hossa injury and not playing in Game 3 against the Boston Bruins?
Yeah, to hear of it now, it sounded like some kind of nerves. He had some nerve problem in his back, and it was leading to him not even feeling his right leg and foot. And it's remarkable that he even played those final 3 games. He wasn't really effective, but he couldn't feel his foot, feel his leg out there. So, back injuries obviously aren't something to mess with, and especially when you start dealing with nerves and that sort of thing. And it's, it was almost surprising that he ended up playing at all. It was something that really could have, obviously the doctors were aware of his problem, but he for not to feel one of your legs while you're skating, it seems like a pretty difficult thing to get overcome. So, no, I don't think there were any. I think the injury was legit, and it sounded like they were even considering back surgery after the season, and that probably would have kept him out of the training camp, and who knows for how long. But they were able to avoid that and did some shots, and he looked pretty good at the start of training camp. He looked really good at Notre Dame early on. It sounded like he aggravated something in his back again, and he's had some problems. So you gotta wonder if that's going to be something that's going to linger throughout the season. Like you said, he's getting up there in age, and back problems usually don't just disappear. So it's something to watch throughout the season, maybe even the rest of his career.
Definitely. I mean, I can't imagine playing hockey on a back problem. It's already tough enough. You got to be one tough badass. Bad guy to play hockey. But real quick, one last question about the Hawks. Brandon Saad, consistency's been a huge issue with him, and I'm just curious, do you see him taking a step forward this year, or is it going to continue trying to find a role in this team?
Yeah, no, I think him playing on the third line is actually going to benefit him. There's not as much pressure. If he was playing as a top 6 forward, there would be a little bit more, expectations for him to score on a regular basis. And they obviously tried to, make him a second line center, and he's never played there, so that experiment failed pretty quickly. And I don't think they want to invest too much time in there. Maybe something they'll look at in the future. But I think putting him on that third line, and there's no reason why he can't be a Vic Stahlberg type where he can, produce some points. And and this will be his first 82-game season too. I think there's some adjustment for him. I think last year was a good start, but and he had some ups and downs. And maybe this season, there won't be as much pressure. Obviously playing with Taves and Hossa helped him, but now in the third line he can, kind of find his own groove. And playing with Shaw, and it looks like Jimmy Hayes or Ben Smith on the other side. That I think it'd be an effective line, but the pressure isn't there to be a line that produces every game, but more of kind of a contributing line.
Right, and again, looking forward to tomorrow night against the Washington Capitals. I cannot wait. I'm sure you're very excited to cover the Blackhawks yet again. The shortest offseason, people talk about it in sports, but now diving into college basketball really quick to talk about the DePaul Blue Demons, of course, our college basketball team here. Do you believe there will be some improvement, of course, bringing in shooters like Billy Garrett, potentially starting at the point guard? I've heard rumors about that. R.J. Currington, Forrest Robinson, a player who's played at community college, now coming in here to potentially get some good minutes. What are your thoughts on this DePaul Blue Demons men's basketball team?
Yeah, no, I mean, they obviously have to improve. I mean, there's not much worse they can get the last few seasons. So, I think, obviously you got Cleveland Melvin and Brandon Young who are terrific players, but the problem is they haven't had, much around them. And I think getting Billy Garrett's the type of player who can contribute immediately and step into that point guard role and kind of allow Brandon Young to move more into an off-guard spot and, be able to create more offense and not having to looking to create for his teammates. So that was obviously something they were hoping they'd have with Shane Larkin in the past. And, with Shane transferring a few years ago, it really didn't allow Brandon to, he had to play more of that lead guard role. So I think Billy Garrett's the type of freshman who's skilled enough to step in and start right away and allow Brandon Young to move over to that two-guard spot and create more offense. And, I don't know a whole lot about the guys they have coming in. Obviously, kid coming in from the junior college, you expect him to be a little bit more up to speed and be able to maybe contribute in that front court a little bit more than what they've had. So I think it's a good mixture. Obviously, I got to see Jamie Crockett a lot in high school, and he's progressed as a player. And, I think he has room to take another step. But I think adding the point guard is going to be a key factor where that backcourt's a little bit more stable, and it's going to allow Brandon Young to do a lot more out there as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm most excited for this year is, if Garrett can step in and play that point guard role, we can finally see Brandon Young in his true position there at the two guard, and he can finally worry more about, like you said, creating for himself than having to create for everybody else as well. But talking about improvement this year, it's going to be Purnell's fourth year. Do you think he's reaching a point where if this team doesn't improve, then the school will go a different way? Or
I think what's going to hold that back is his contract. He's reportedly making $2.5 million and has it was a 7-year deal. So I don't see them walking away from that deal. It's a lot of money on the table if you're paying him $5-7 million, what he's due still. So I think he's going to get 5-6 years, and it's what they've done in recruiting lately. I think it's a positive move. I think getting some of the Chicago kids. I think guys like Mike Henry and Tommy Hamilton and Rashawn Stimmons. I think there's a lot of high upside for those guys. There's some risk where Tommy Hamilton, who hasn't always been consistent in high school, but he's a great upside. Rashawn Stimmons is the kid that had to obviously go the junior college route, but I was a big fan of his in high school too. I think the kid was definitely underrated. And Mike Henry, who obviously has ups and downs at Illinois, but he's a big-time scorer, and if they can figure out defense a little bit, I think he's a guy that can step in and be a starter next season too. So I think he's done a better job recruiting in Chicago, and I think the change in conference it may help them too, where they don't have as many difficult teams to play. It's certainly going to help too, and obviously the buzz with the state, the arena and stuff too, all that stuff maybe helps on the recruiting trail as well. So I think the program is headed in a better direction. I'm not convinced that Purnell is still going to be the guy, but I think he's doing better than he was before.
Yeah, and again, just touching on this potential recruiting class of this DePaul Blue Demons basketball team, you've been tweeting a lot about Cliff Alexander, and what happened last year with Jabari Parker was a lot more hype than legitimacy coming to DePaul and obviously choosing Duke. Do you think Cliff Alexander has a spot here and a chance to come to DePaul to play?
Yeah, I don't see it. I think I think he's looking at DePaul realistically. I think having all the Chicago guys, there's some tie, and from what I've heard that the Cliff would like to play in Chicago or Illinois, and kind of play for those home state teams. I just don't know with a guy who's one and done whether it's realistic. I mean, often you want to be on national television, you want to be able to play for a title, and I think DePaul may progress, by next season, but I still don't think it's an NCAA title contender. So I think those are some factors where you get the program moving in the right direction, and you may be able to land something like that in a few years. But I just don't see it happening next year. But the stranger things have happened where guys have Quentin Richardson. A lot of those guys took a risk coming to DePaul and decided on playing for the hometown team, and it persuaded other guys to do it too. So sometimes you just need one guy to do that. But if I was betting, I'd probably still bet against Alexander going to DePaul.
It's tough to hear that because, like we said last year, the Jabari Parker was really just more hype, just keeping DePaul in the thing, more so for DePaul's sake than him actually coming here. But that would be really cool if Cliff Alexander came here. But like you said, it is a long stretch. Yeah, and again, just touching on this DePaul team right now, again, I think, like you said, there's a lot more to do right now, obviously, than last year, and people were still getting hyped around this team around this time last year, but they have a lot more talent. There's no doubt about it, especially with Billy Garrett and, again, R.J. Currington. These are pure shooters, and obviously the guys who transferred like Moses Morgan and Donovan Kirk obviously getting to play. Donovan Kirk was a great guy, and I had him on the show last year. He was a terrific ball player, too. Terrific guy. Moses Morgan was in Cleveland Melvin and Brandon Young's recruiting class. I think the number one guy out of those three did not pan out. So you're looking at, again, hopefully R.J. Currington and Billy Garrett can pan out for this Blue Demons team right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, they need some of those guys to immediately step in. Melvin and Young have been really nice college basketball players for 3 years now, and unfortunately they don't have much success to show for it. DePaul hasn't had much talent around them. Jamie Crockett, he's probably been the best player the last few years. He's been out closer to double figures, but there's been too many games where it's been only Young and Melvin doing something, and whether it's I think lack of rebounding, defense, and some of those areas that that's really kind of plagued them the last few years. And I think offensively they may be good. I think you're going to get years out of Young and Melvin, and and get more from that production. And Billy Garrett's got some upside there, and Jamie Crockett obviously can step outside and get to the basket. So I think defensively is the key, and it's going to come down to that front court too. You're playing a lot of teams with some pretty good big men, and they've been often getting beat on the board, so I think that it's another key area this season.
Yeah, and again, terrific points, terrific time talking Hawks and DePaul Blue Demons men's basketball. Mr. Powers, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. And again, I know you're very busy with the Hawks, and of course, once men's basketball starts up here at DePaul, but we'd love to have you back on whenever you're free.
Yeah, just let me know.
I
enjoyed it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Powers.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, and again, Mr. Powers, who works for ESPN 1000 and covers the Blackhawks and the Blue Demons, a terrific guest to have on, Tom.
Oh, yeah, he was great. Talking Hawks gets me excited again for this year, just in hockey in general, and then anytime we get to talk DePaul Blue Demons basketball is always fun.
Exactly, and again, as I mentioned, as we open up the YouTube video, that YouTube video sent just a rush down my spine.
Yeah.
And talking Hawks sent a rush down my spine because the hockey season for the Blackhawks starts tomorrow, which is unbelievable to think of. And it's the great part about hockey. It's the shortest off season in sports.
Right. Pretty much runs the same time till basketball. Basketball doesn't start for another month. So, and it's probably the most difficult sport to play. So.
It is. I mean, you're getting hit as hard. I mean, again, we were talking about Hossa.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have any feeling in his foot. The nerve damage was incredible there. And
right.
Again, we talked about how fans just couldn't take it, and their passion for the sport is unbelievable too. And they wanted Hossa to play, but as he said, he could not play, and he did end up playing the rest of that series. But in Game 3, he just couldn't go.
Right. Exactly.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break here, Tom. What song do we have for the listeners?
All right, we'll go "Running with the Devil" by Van Halen. We'll keep it old school.
I like it, Tom. And again, we come back here. We're gonna wrap it up with some Monday Night Football, and also your calls if you want to call in 773-325-7341. Here is
"Running with the Devil" by Van Halen.
And you are listening to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Welcome back to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. We're going to continue our Hawks talk here, and I believe we have Chris on hold with us. Chris, are you with us? Chris, are you with us? I believe a little bit maybe a problem with the connection there, Chris. If you want to call back, 773-325-7341. We could continue talking Hawks, or if anyone wants to call in, you could do so. We'll talk some Hawks, Bears, get your thoughts in about last night. We'll talk about the Saints game next week, just because the Saints are playing Monday Night Football tonight.
Right.
And now I believe Chris is calling in right now.
Okay.
So, yeah, if we want to talk some more Hawks.
Yeah, continue with the Hawks. Obviously, the season starts tomorrow night. Big game against the Capitals. We mentioned earlier that Crawford, Jesus, and Hossa will all be able to play, which is great news. We were talking about the injuries that Jesus and Hossa have been dealing with, and obviously Crawford's going to be a huge part of this Hawks team for years going forward. So that's good. He'll be able to excited, though, they start their title defense.
Yeah, I don't think any Hawks fan wanted to see Javi Bolin in net.
Yeah, I know. As great as we were talking, he's obviously tons of experience, but Crawford's the guy. He was the guy last year.
He got paid a lot of money. Hawks fans want to see their big-time goaltender in that, especially in the home opener and the defense of their title. I believe Chris is here with us. Chris, are you with us?
Yes.
All right, Chris is on the air. We have the connection ready to go. So, Chris, we were just talking Hawks with Mr. Scott Powers of ESPN 1000. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that, but the Hawks, of course, open up their title defense tomorrow. So I'm sure you're pretty excited to finally get a chance to watch your Chicago Blackhawks.
Definitely, man. And as you guys were just talking about earlier, how like the videos you were watching and stuff about the Hawks just sent chills down your spine. I mean, I've been watching just replays of all like the playoff games, and I'm wearing Johnny Taves' sweater right now, so I'm just really excited, really happy to finally start a brand new season with title defense.
Definitely. Title defense is, it's going to be tough winning back-to-back years, but I think the Hawks have a great bringing in pretty much all the talent back. We talked missing some role players, like Frolik's not coming back. Obviously Dave Bolin traded away, but they locked up Crawford. All the big guys are back, and I just think Kane's going to get that much better this year. So I'm excited for that development. And Taze is going to be what Taze always is.
Yeah, no doubt. You're absolutely right. I mean, Taves, like you said, Taves is like a really good captain, a really good leader. And especially for a team like the Blackhawks, he's a really good guy to have as sort of like the main guy to go to. Kane has definitely stepped up his play past few years, so it's definitely another thing to look forward to. And even though we unfortunately had to trade away a couple of guys like Boland and Frolik, Stahlberg and Ray Emery, even though we had to trade away those guys, I'm still feeling very confident that we won't have a season like we did in 2010 where we had to trade away a lot of our fourth liners and most of our tough guys, and it showed right away in the season that we were just getting beat up physically, and Vancouver in that playoff series just completely manhandled us. Even though we took it to a seventh game, it was still a pretty difficult series, and it definitely showed. But this year I think it'll be totally different because we still have that core still with us.
Exactly, and that's what Mr. Powers was talking about, the core. And Bickle, Taves, and Kane, I think Bickle, he talked about he's an above-average player, no doubt about it, and to match him up with Taves and Tane, two of the best players in the NHL, to give him opportunities to score right in front of the net. And he did in the playoffs. He did it against Boston. Yeah. He did it against Detroit, especially, to give him that one-goal lead in Game 6. I can't wait to see him back on the ice tomorrow night, and just as much as Hawks fans, can't wait to see this entire team back on the ice tomorrow night.
Yeah, and again, I'll tell you, I'm really excited just having hockey back and just being able to watch now a full 82-game season and just seeing how things might have changed now, like over the off season, and how like new things will go into effect because it's the new season. But having, as you just mentioned, having Bickle on the same line with Hibbs and Kane, I think that'll help spread it out for the Hawks and just give them more scoring opportunities, because you have like the main two guys in Kane and Taves, and then again you have a guy like Bickle who stepped it up as a goal scorer in the playoffs, but during the regular season wasn't really that much of a goal scorer, but put a big body in front of the net, wait for a rebound, and it's a very high chance that like you'll get a goal most nights if you just work by that system. So I think that's definitely one of the things that the Hawks have to look forward to this year from an offensive perspective.
Absolutely. You know, we were wondering last year going into the season if Kane and Taves were going to be playing a lot on the same line, and obviously later in the games they were, but for the most part during the regular season they weren't. Obviously trying to keep the talent spread out, but now that Quenneville can pair them together, it's gonna be really scary to watch because this Hawks team with those two as their front line,
they're dangerous.
Right. I don't know that there's a better front line in hockey right now. If you can get those two guys playing together, and then Bickle, obviously big body in front of net, he's a tough guy, proving he can score goals.
And we saw them good in them playing together, especially in that Game 5 overtime against the LA Kings where Kane scored his hat trick. And who was it from? Jonathan Taves.
Right, yeah. Taves is going to make anybody better. Kane's already an out-of-this-world talent, so it's definitely that's got to be exciting for Hawks fans going forward. And then I'm pumped to watch this defense again because that defense was unbelievable last year. Yeah.
Chris, any last thoughts on the Hawks?
No, none really that we've already discussed. Just happy that it's back on, and best of luck for this season. And I think they'll make a run at it again. I think they'll definitely make another run.
Yeah, and of course, Tom being that Philly fan, not hoping for it, but of course, in Chicago, he's going to have to start rooting for him.
I like to see the Hawks do well.
No, I'm joking, Tom. All right, Chris, thank you very much for the phone call.
All right, guys. Thanks for taking my call as well.
Of course, Chris. And Chris, one of the biggest Hawks fans I know around, and you see the passion, and it's there for every Hawks fan in Chicago.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a big-time game tomorrow night, no doubt.
Oh, yeah. The city's going to be, obviously electrified to see the Hawks back in action. Against the Capitals, they should get that win.
Exactly. And now let's take a little bit of a twist and a turn here towards football, which we were discussing earlier. And to do so, we're going to play a little bit of Monday Night Football. But first here, if you have a You Gotta Be Beeping Me moment, Tom, I'm going to show you mine. It doesn't have to do with football or anything that's been going on in the sport. I just saw this hashtag going on Twitter. So first, I'm going to play the Hawk Harrelson to open up the You Gotta Be Beeping Me moment of the week. Here we go.
He popped up to Dunn. What job?
Oh, what are you doing? He threw him out of the ball game. You gotta be beeping me. What in the hell are you doing? What are you doing, Wagner? You gotta be kidding me.
So, of course, that is to open up our You Gotta Be Beeping Me segment. So, Tom, if you have yours.
Joe Flacco yesterday, 5 interceptions, and the Ravens not running the ball after midway through the second quarter. Just a real head-scratcher there. They lost the game yesterday, the Buffalo Bills, but 5 picks from your $120 million Super Bowl man, unacceptable.
It's not going to work. And, of course, the Bills are a better team. But when Joe Flacco's doing that, it's also not helping the cause.
Exactly.
And my You Gotta Be Beep Me moment of the week has to do with the NBA, and that's why I'm saying it's not really current right now, but Gerald Wallace with training camp starting, and I believe it started Friday, so that would be 3 or 4 days late to training camp, and him having to be that top scorer on the Celtics, you've got to be beeping me, Gerald Wallace, why are you coming to training camp late? It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, especially,
a new coach?
A new coach and everything, and, you wish Brad Stevens well. I'm a big Brad Stevens fan, but that's not a good start.
That's not a good start at Boston. I'm sure Rajon Rondo is very upset, and we saw how upset he was in the offseason.
Absolutely.
All right, let's dive into the Monday Night Football game now, of course, with the Miami Dolphins and the New Orleans Saints. How about this? Miami is 3-0, and the Saints might have been expected to be good, but with Sean Payton back there, 3-0 and leading the NFC South as well.
Yeah, it's fins up, like Max said. Dolphins playing unbelievable football right now. The Saints, I kind of figured they were going to be this good. Peyton was going to come back with Sean Payton. That is, both Paytons came back with the revenge, but Sean Payton came back with the revenge after watching his team suffer last year for an entire season. Breeze was licking his chops waiting for Sean Payton to get back, and they've tore it up so far through 3 games.
It's true. You usually talk about a player licking his chops at a defense, but he was waiting. Yeah. He wanted his coach back, and they work. So we talk about coaches and Andy Reid and Alex Smith working so well together. Well, Sean Payton and Drew Brees work unbelievably together, and they've worked especially since 2006 or 2007 when they played the Bears. That beginning year, that beginning of the year when they started off, and Reggie Bush and that explosive offense all the way till now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you talk about classic coach quarterback combos: Dungy, Manning, Belichick, Brady. Peyton, Brees is up there as well.
Exactly, and they both got their contract extensions. So now here we go to tonight, where Joe Philbin and Ryan Tannehill, is that a new explosive coach-quarterback combination as well?
It has been so far, with limited to no running game either. So we'll see. I think just Miami's defense is so good, though. Really been solid through 3 games. I'm interested to see now that how they match up against. They held their own against Atlanta last week. Now let's see if they can hold their own against another high-powered offense, Drew Brees and the Saints.
Right, and again, you look at the way the Dolphins are playing, not only on defense but on offense. And Mike Wallace, thank God he didn't complain after week 3, or especially last week.
Yeah.
Again, you look at the way, I think he had two or 3 catches for 22 yards.
Yeah.
And in week 1, he had 1 catch or 2 catches for 11 yards. So going up 10 yards after his big week 2 performance.
Yeah.
But he didn't complain, which is a good thing for the Dolphins. At least his Heartline had the spotlight in week 3 with the 56 yards and a touchdown. But they're a big-time defender, as you were talking about, on defense. As we pull up the box score from the Falcons game, let's see, the linebacker, Donnell Ellerbe.
Yeah, Ellerbe, world champion with the Ravens last year, so came in matching up with Cameron Wake. Cameron Wake already an all-pro talent, sack master. But yeah, the Dolphins' defense has been great. Quick tidbit: I need Wallace to put up big numbers tonight in fantasy if I have any chance.
So you need his every other week performance to beat tonight, obviously.
Yeah, I need a big performance.
And the other big thing is no Jake Long this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, going to St. Louis, match up with the other Long, no relation, Howie Long's son.
Right, Chris
but
Long.
This offensive line has no names, and I'm going to pull up the depth chart right now for Miami. But Tannehill is playing terrific in front. As you mentioned, the running game, not playing too terrific. Lamar Miller.
Right, Daniel Thomas kind of splitting carries, no real guy taking the lead.
Averaging about 90 to 100 yards rushing, but again, when the pressure's on Tannehill for a second-year quarterback, that's the thing. We saw him play well last year, but he was very under the spotlight with Wilson, Kaepernick, and Luck all playing well.
Right, and he had Reggie Bush, who was having, like we said earlier, 2,000 all-purpose yards. When you have a guy like that, it makes it that much easier. But now, obviously he's taken a little bigger of a role this year, and he's excelling so far.
I was actually wrong about this offensive line. Tyson Clabo, I know. Marcus Pouncey, I know. Richie Incognito, I also know.
Oh, Richie Incognito, the walking penalty.
Exactly.
But Pouncey, I think, is an all-pro talent. So obviously you have a building block right there in the middle. But who you got tonight?
I'm gonna go. See, I think we both want to take the Dolphins, but are we going to take the Dolphins?
It's in the Superdome.
It's in the Superdome. I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm going fins up.
You're going fins up. So even though I had us doubt a little bit with my talk, I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins. What's your score?
I think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. I think it's going to be 30-24.
30-24, and I'm going to go with the Dolphins 30-27, so very close to yours as well.
All right.
Tom and I are both on track. How about this? The Dolphins would be undefeated, and we talked about that schedule being very tough.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be diving right into that tough schedule, and they would have won 2 very tough games against the Falcons and Saints.
Absolutely.
A very unbelievable start to Joe Philbin's second year in Miami.
Yep.
We're going to wrap up the show here, and of course, we thank Mr. Scott Powers for calling in. We hope he joins us next week. Mr. Del Yates, who you heard last week talking about Notre Dame football, hopefully will be joining us next week as well.
Yeah. Thanks to Scott Powers and thanks to Max and Chris for calling in and everybody who listened. It's excited to get hockey back. Loving that football's back. So sports, it's a good time to be a sports fan right now.
Yes, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Check out the podcast. I'll be tweeting about it on my Twitter account at The Lineup RDP. Thank you very much for listening to The Lineup on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.
Keeping it real good. Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.